Have you ever looked back and thought, if only I knew then what I know now? It's a common feeling, especially as we get older. You start to realize that all the things you rushed through or worried about, most of them didn't matter nearly as much as you thought. And the things that did matter? Those were often the quiet lessons, the moments you didn't fully understand until years later. Asterisk now. Here's the interesting part. With age comes a kind of wisdom that can't be found in books or on the internet. It comes from experience, real lived experience. The kind that's been earned through mistakes, heartaches, triumphs, quiet mornings, and sleepless nights. It's what makes the elderly so rich in insight, even when the world around them seems to be moving too fast to listen. Asterisk today, we're going to talk about what older people truly know, what most folks, especially the younger ones, often overlook or ignore. These aren't just life tips or feel-good sayings. They're truths that, if you embrace them, can change how you live the rest of your life, no matter your age. And even if you're already a senior, this might feel like a gentle reminder that your wisdom matters more than ever. So let's have this heart-to-heart conversation. Asterisk. Let's start with something we learned slowly over the years. That time is the most valuable thing we have. You hear that all your life, but it doesn't really hit you until the days start to move a little faster. Until decades feel like they flew by in a blink. When you're younger, it's easy to waste time on grudges, on perfectionism, or chasing things that don't bring real joy. But as you get older, you begin to see that time is not just something to manage, it's something to treasure. Every quiet morning with a cup of tea, every walk in the fresh air, every laugh with someone you love, those moments are gold. Asterisk. And yet, many people still fill their days with stress and distractions. The elderly often look at that and think, slow down. Enjoy what's right in front of you. Because they know that the small things aren't small at all. They're the very fabric of a meaningful life. Asterisk. That leads to the second thing most people ignore. Your health is your real wealth. Now, I know you've heard this before. But again, it's one of those things you don't fully appreciate until something starts to go wrong. When you're young, your body just works. You can eat whatever, sleep whenever, and get away with it. But when you're older, you realize how precious it is just to wake up pain-free, to walk without help, to sleep through the night. Asterisk. Many older folks, if they could go back, wouldn't chase money or fame. They'd take better care of their bodies. Because what good is success if you're too tired or too sick to enjoy it? And that's something many people still ignore. They put off sleep, skip meals, ignore warning signs, all for the sake of getting ahead. But the elderly know. When your body breaks down, nothing else works right. Asterisk. So what can you do with that wisdom? You start prioritizing movement. Even gentle walking. You hydrate. You eat foods that nourish instead of just fill. You learn to listen to your body because it's always trying to tell you something. And more importantly, you stop treating your health like an afterthought. You start treating it like the foundation that everything else rests on. Asterisk now. Let's talk about something a little more emotional, something older people understand deeply but rarely say out loud. Not everyone will stay in your life, and that's okay. You see, when you're younger, you try hard to hold on to everyone. You bend over backwards to be liked, to be accepted, to keep relationships going, even when they drain you. But with age comes the realization that not all relationships are meant to last forever. And more than that, you learn that you don't need a lot of people to be happy. You just need the right ones. Asterisk. Elderly people have lived long enough to see friends drift away, to say goodbye to loved ones, and to watch family change in unexpected ways. It's not always easy, but it teaches a profound truth. That peace sometimes comes from letting go, not holding on. They understand that being alone doesn't have to mean being lonely. In fact, many find a deep sense of contentment in there. Own company, something younger folks often fear. Asterisk, and what a lesson that is. To know that your value isn't based on who calls you, texts you, or visits. That your worth doesn't shrink just because your social circle does. That your own companionship can be enough. That's a powerful thing to know, and it's something many people don't learn till later in life. Asterisk, but it doesn't stop there. Another quiet truth the elderly know, and one that often gets ignored, is that worrying doesn't fix anything. If you sit with an older person for a while, especially one who's lived through real hardship, you'll often hear something like, "No use worrying about what you can't control." It's not that they don't care, it's that they learned the hard way that worry steals your present and solves nothing in return. Asterisk. Think about all the things you've worried about in your life. How many of them actually turned out as bad as you feared? And even if they did the worrying make it better? Probably not. Most seniors know this deep down. They faced loss, illness, financial strain, and still found a way through. Not by panicking, but by accepting what is and focusing on what they can do. Asterisk. That doesn't mean you ignore your problems. It means you stop feeding them with fear. You look for calm. You take a breath. You do the next right thing, one step at a time. That's what gets you through not endless circles of anxious thoughts. Asterisk. Now that we've touched on how seniors see time, health, relationships, and worry, let's take a closer look at one more thing they deeply understand: the importance of appreciating the present moment. Asterisk. Because while many people are chasing someday when they'll retire, someday when they'll be happy, someday when they'll slow down, the elderly know that someday isn't promised. All you truly have is today. And once you learn to find joy in today, everything changes. Asterisk. There's a quiet kind of wisdom that comes with age, the kind that doesn't shout but still speaks louder than any lecture. And one of the most powerful lessons the elderly know is this: life is always changing, and you have to learn to change with it. Asterisk. You'd be surprised how many people fight this truth. They cling to the way things used to be, hoping life will somehow go back to the good old days. But those who've lived through the decades, the ones who've seen the world shift through wars, recessions, technology, and personal losses, understand that resisting change only brings more pain. They've learned to bend instead of break. Asterisk. Think about it. The people who age gracefully aren't necessarily the wealthiest or healthiest. They're the ones who've adapted. They figured out how to find joy in a new routine after retirement. They learned to live with less when circumstances demanded it. They even embraced new technology, like video calls and online banking, not because they loved it, but because it helped them stay connected and independent. Asterisk. That flexibility, that willingness to grow even in old age, that's strength. That's wisdom. And it's something many people overlook because they assume getting older means getting stuck. But the elderly know staying mentally and emotionally flexible is just as important as staying physically active. Because life doesn't stop changing, and neither should we. Asterisk. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you. Success doesn't always look the way you thought it would. When you're younger, you often measure success by how much money you make, how big your house is, or how many people admire you. But the older generation, the ones who've lived through the ups and downs, eventually come to realize that success is much simpler and far more personal. Asterisk. For many elderly folks, real success is having a peaceful morning. It's being able to cook your own breakfast. It's hearing from a grandchild. It's waking up without pain. It's having someone to laugh with. None of that makes headlines, but it's real. And it's what most people miss when they're too busy chasing titles or applause. Asterisk. Older adults have had time to reflect. They've seen people rise and fall, people who had it all but were never truly happy. And they've seen quiet, modest lives that were full of purpose and love. That shift in perspective is huge. It teaches us that success isn't about looking impressive. It's about feeling fulfilled. So maybe it's time to ask yourself, what does success mean to you now? Not the version you were sold in your 20s, but the version that fits your life today. Maybe success is simply enjoying your cup of coffee in peace, or waking up with something to look forward to. The elderly understand that once you stop comparing and start appreciating, life feels a whole lot richer. Another beautiful truth the elderly know often from experience is this: forgiveness is more for you than for them. Carrying bitterness or resentment around for years doesn't hurt the other person. It only hurts you. And yet, many people spend decades holding on to old pain, old betrayals, old grudges. It's understandable, of course. Some wounds go deep. But the longer you hold on, the heavier your spirit becomes. Talk to someone in their 70s, 80s, or even 90s, and they'll often tell you the same thing. I wish I hadn't wasted so much time being angry. Because what they've come to see is that anger doesn't solve anything. It just steals your joy. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget. It doesn't mean you excuse someone's behavior. It means you're choosing peace for yourself. You're setting yourself free. And you don't always have to tell the person you forgive them. Sometimes forgiveness is a silent process, a quiet decision you make in your heart. It's about saying, I won't let this hurt define me anymore. And that shift, it's powerful. It can give you your peace back. Now, let's talk about a lesson that's especially close to the hearts of those who've lived a long life. Money can't buy what matters most. It's easy to say that, but for seniors who've been through years of saving, spending, earning, and losing, it hits different. They've bought the things. They've chased the comfort. But in the end, it's always the relationships, the memories, the quiet joys that meant the most. Many elderly people will tell you the best days weren't the ones where they got a raise or bought a new car. They were the ones spent laughing with friends, cooking with family, or simply sitting in the sun with someone they loved. These are the moments that stick. And yet, so many people are caught up in the endless pursuit of more stuff, more status, more distractions. But at some point, you realize that what you really crave isn't more, it's meaning. So the question becomes, are you filling your life with things, or are you filling it with moments? Are you investing in experiences that feed your soul? Or are you accumulating things that will one day gather dust? This brings us to another gentle truth. It's never too late to start again. That's something the elderly truly understand. Maybe because they've had to reinvent themselves more than once. After retirement, after a spouse passes, after a health scare, after their kids grow up and move away, starting over becomes part of life. And they've learned not to fear it. Sure, it's hard. Starting over at any age feels daunting. But when you talk to older folks who've done it, they'll tell you this. Sometimes, the new beginning brought more peace than the old routine ever did. Sometimes, it led to a hobby that became a passion, or a new friendship that filled a lonely space. The elderly have learned to find purpose in unexpected places, and that's a gift. So if you're feeling stuck, or like you've missed your chance, remember what they've come to know. It's not too late. It's never too late to pick up a paintbrush, to learn something new, to reach out to someone, or to try a different way of living. Every day you wake up is a fresh page. You still have the pen. And while we're here, let's pause for a moment and take this in. Everything we've talked about so far, adapting to change, redefining success, letting go of resentment, valuing people over things, and starting over, these are not just lessons. They're invitations. Invitations to live more intentionally, to live more peacefully, to live more freely. Asterisk, because when you sit across from someone who's seen nearly a century of life, and they smile and say, "It all goes faster than you think," you start to realize just how precious today really is. Asterisk. Let's keep going. There's still more wisdom to explore. There's a certain quiet strength in those who've lived a full life, something in the way they carry themselves, in the way they speak, that tells you they've made peace with things most of us are still fighting. And if you listen closely, really listen, you'll hear one of the most important truths they know. Happiness is a choice you make every single day, not a destination you reach. Asterisk. Now that might sound simple, maybe even cliché, but those who've seen many seasons come and go have lived it. They've known deep sadness, faced hardships, lost loved ones, and dealt with disappointments. Yet many of them still smile with such genuine warmth. Why? Because at some point, they stopped waiting for perfect conditions to feel happy. Asterisk. They learned that you can be grieving and still find something beautiful in a sunrise. That you can be lonely and still laugh at a funny memory. That you can feel pain in your body, but still feel peace in your spirit. Happiness isn't something that just lands in your lap. It's something you learn to find in small, quiet moments. The cup of tea, the warm blanket, the phone call from an old friend, the smell of the rain, the music from your younger years. Asterisk. The elderly know that if you keep waiting for everything to be perfect before you let yourself be happy, you'll be waiting forever. But if you look for the little things, if you choose to see them, your days become softer, sweeter. That's real wisdom. Asterisk. Another thing the elderly understand, in a way that only time can teach, is this. You don't need to be everything to everyone. When we're younger, we often bend over backwards, trying to please people, trying to be the best parent, the perfect spouse, the most loyal friend, the hardest worker. And while some of that is noble, it's also exhausting. Asterisk. As people grow older, they start to see the cost of always putting others first and themselves last. They begin to realize that saying no is not selfish, it's self-care. That setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about protecting your peace. And they learn something most people ignore until it's too late. You're allowed to choose yourself. Asterisk. You're allowed to rest when you're tired. You're allowed to walk away from toxic people. You're allowed to pursue what brings you joy, even if others don't understand it. Older adults who've made peace with this often seem more relaxed, more centered, because they're no longer chasing approval. They've learned how to live in alignment with what truly matters to them. Asterisk. And speaking of what matters, let's talk about this truth. Being present is more powerful than you think. Ask anyone over 80, and they'll probably tell you the same thing: life went by in a blink. And what they remember most vividly aren't the big moments. They're the small ones they were truly present for. Asterisk. That moment sitting on the porch during a summer evening. That one afternoon baking cookies with the grandchildren. That conversation at the kitchen table that ended in laughter. What makes those moments so memorable isn't just what happened, it's that they were really there. Not distracted. Not rushing. Just present. Asterisk. The older we get, the more we see how fleeting time is. And those who've learned to slow down and savor the now, they carry something special. A kind of peace that comes from knowing they didn't miss the beauty of their life while chasing the next big thing. Asterisk. So maybe today, you can put the phone down for a while. Take a slow walk. Watch the birds. Call someone and really listen. Be here now, because now is all we truly have. Asterisk. And here's another truth the elderly know deep in their bones. Love doesn't always look like what you expected, but it's always worth giving. Over the years, people come and go. Some relationships break your heart. Some family members drift away. Some friends are lost to time, but even with all the pain, the elderly still give love. Asterisk, they smile at strangers. They help when no one's watching. They forgive without needing an apology, because they've learned that holding back love to protect yourself only leads to regret. That loving people, even if they leave, even if they hurt you, is still one of the best things you can do with your life. Asterisk,